Hey everybody, it is Tiffany with Rock Bottom Wellness, and I want to dive in today a little bit about the effects of blood sugar dysregulation. So when you are eating a standard American diet, which most of us are, but probably a lot of you that are here are already way past that and getting really smart with your diet, and you're making your way towards a healthier way of eating. But you may still have some symptoms. And I encourage you that if you have a lot of these things I'll be talking about today, if you have a lot of this stuff going on, then you're going to want to take a little bit of time to heal this before you jump in with, a shorter fasting, a longer fasting window and a shorter eating window. So you want to make this as gradual as possible, heal your body, heal your cells, heal your insulin sensitivity so that you can jump in and get the most from what fasting has to offer for you. So with that, I'll start with talking about what normal blood sugar or blood glucose, as it's called on the labs that you get at the doctor's office. I just want to talk about that a little bit first. So normal blood sugar is considered to be between 80 and 100. That's sort of a general most common range I see. I see on some labs that people bring into me, their reference range is about 75 to 95 I've seen 75 to 100, I've seen 80 to 105. So I'm just going to kind of split the difference and just call it 80 to 100. In my experience, people who start hovering around that 95, 96, 98, 102, once their blood sugars that are fasting are hovering around that high end of what's considered normal, that's when it takes a year, maybe a couple years, where prediabetes is actually diagnosed. So if you're hovering at that high end of the range, you need to spend special attention listening to this. So again, that normal sweet spot here for normal blood glucose is right in here, that 80 to 100. You want to be in that red line as often as possible throughout the day. So the conventional wisdom tells us that in order to keep our metabolism fired up and therefore our ability to lose weight fired up, you need to eat several times a day. Maybe it's grazing, maybe it's small meals, many times a day. And I've even seen where it's very common, at least 6 times a day, but it's common up to 10 times a day where people eat little bits all day long. So what happens when we eat? Let's talk about that, and then I'll address this eating all day long thing. So when we eat something, and then when we're talking about blood sugar, we're talking primarily about carbohydrates. So it doesn't matter really what carbohydrate it is. It's going to result in a little bit of a blood sugar rise. However, not all carbohydrates are created equally. So if you take 1 cup of broccoli and 1 cup of pasta, the pasta is going to spike your blood sugar much quicker, and it's going to go higher, and it's also going to create a need for more insulin. So just back to basics, biology 101 type of thing. So a little lesson on that. So when you eat something, a carbohydrate, your blood sugar increases, your blood glucose rises. So your pancreas is signaled to send out insulin into the bloodstream, and then it takes that glucose and pushes it into the cells of your body so that it can provide energy and do the work that it needs to do. So when we are constantly bombarding our body 6 to 10 times a day with carbohydrates or not so healthy carbohydrates, we are constantly requiring our pancreas to release insulin to take care of that blood sugar. So hopefully that makes sense for you. The problem with that is that insulin is considered a fat storage hormone. So if insulin is always present in your system, it's going to be really hard to get rid of extra weight. So what I'm going to show you here in this really simplified diagram is that when you have normal blood sugar, you kind of stay steady. You're not on this emotional roller coaster all day long. If you are someone who eats at, let's just give a scenario for the morning at least, and it kind of goes throughout the day. If you start your morning with a typical American breakfast of a maybe it's a large bagel with fat-free cream cheese, because we've been kind of told that we need to not eat fat, and then we have a glass of orange juice or something with it. That's pretty much a carbohydrate heavy meal. So your blood sugar rises, your insulin rises to take that blood sugar and put it into the cells. And then maybe a couple hours later, you're at work and you're feeling a little bit stressed out and you're feeling cravings coming on, and you maybe are getting a headache, you might feel a little hangry because your blood sugar has now dropped. So think of the whole thing as what goes up must come down. So sometimes we have this exaggerated response to the what goes up, your blood sugar must come down, your blood sugar. So what happens is we can have these symptoms that have us running for more food. So we go to the vending machine, we eat the snacks that we have in our desk drawer, and we have a little bit something while we're sitting at our office desk, which is mindlessly eating. So guess what? That increases your blood sugar again. It also mounts that insulin response, and then causes that same thing to happen over and over and over again. So if you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then you have at least one snack in the morning, one in the afternoon, and maybe one even at night, but some people are still eating like a pre-meal on the way home from work. I hear this a lot, where people do eat 6 to 10 times a day. Now, if you've seen some of my other programs and plans in my ebooks, you've seen where I have a set of meal plans that shows eating and like an eating pattern of 6 times a day. And that's only because I'm trying to get people to eat those meals at those types of meals so that they're balanced macros and not just random snacks of chips and crackers and that type of thing. So the whole idea is that if you are really dysregulated in your eating and in your blood sugar, you might need to start out eating really balanced whole food meals for a while until you start to heal that situation. And that can take in as little as a couple of weeks, depending on how severe your symptoms are. But I hear all the time that when your blood sugar goes up, you have some symptoms, and then you crash, and then you have other symptoms. And I feel like when people say, oh, I've got low blood sugar, they have some sense of knowing what that is, or I'm hypoglycemic. That's just another name for low blood sugar. So we have all these symptoms, but then we get to thinking, oh, it's because I'm depressed. Well, you're partially depressed, or your symptoms are worse because you have imbalanced blood sugar. Maybe you have panic attacks. So people who have a lot of stress going on in their body cannot manage the stress on the cellular level, can resolve a lot of symptoms by balancing out their blood sugar. Insomnia sets in. You can have night sweats far before you would have any kind of hormonal imbalance to cause night sweats. And then that whole, we joke about the hangry situation and the hangry symptoms, but they are real. And I have some of these, I had some of these symptoms, throughout college. You think you're eating well, or you don't really think about eating well at all when you're in college, because it's about whatever is cheapest and easiest and fastest. And so I suffered with a lot of these symptoms for a really long time, and it really didn't take me long, when I knew different, how to feel better. It just didn't take me that long to feel better. So you can do it. You might need to start by eating the 6 times a day, or 4 times a day, or 5 times a day, whatever it is for you, with those balanced macro meal examples. So start with that 7-day eating plan even, and do that a little bit before you get into shortening up your eating windows. So once you get balanced, you start to heal that insulin insensitivity, and therefore you will start to be able to take on a shorter eating window and therefore release the weight. So just to go on a little bit here at the bottom, it talks about blood sugar with regard to, a non-diabetic. So if you are a non-diabetic, or you have not been diagnosed yet, you will rarely get over 140 after you eat a meal. And if you have a fasting blood sugar that's greater than 130, that's a cause for concern. And if you have a blood sugar after a meal of 180, that is hyperglycemic, and you are, along with some other markers, probably going to be diagnosed with diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So the other thing that I want to touch on, if you are or know someone who is a type 1 diabetic, that is a problem of having low or no insulin because the pancreas isn't working. So when you are taking on the idea of blood sugar balance, when you're a type 1 diabetic where you're taking insulin in the form of shots usually, you are going to be way more careful with your eating window, because if you end up by fasting too much of the time, your blood sugar could get really, really low, and your insulin would have to be addressed and dealt with so that it's not, you're not taking too much to cause your blood sugar to go too low. So you need to be very cautious of that. And that's why I say for people who are not diabetic but have really dysregulated blood sugar, you might need to take a little extra time before you jump into the fasting. So type 1 diabetics, be super careful to adjust your medications, adjust your insulin to compensate for you're already naturally lowering your blood sugar with the types of foods you're eating. And I would recommend to not do any shorter of an eating window other than the 16-8 version of intermittent fasting, at least for a while, until you understand how this is affecting your blood sugar and how much insulin you need to take. So hopefully that is helpful and helps to explain some of the issues that can arise from eating many, many times a day, how that affects your insulin, which again is the fat storage hormone, and why it makes sense to slow that down, keep that from spiking all day long so that you can heal and start to release the weight. All right, have a great day. Thanks for stopping in. Bye-bye.